Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right, well, hello, and welcome to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
How's it going, Sarah? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. I was telling a couple clients I am now 50% potato.
I'm 30% cranberries. Just
Oh, you
kidding.
know what? My mom loves that weird thing. It is just the texture, I just
I
can't. I
love it.
just ugh. But Rachel makes a special one though, doesn't she?
Amazing. It makes it early in the morning and the whole house smells. I just love that smell of cranberries. I can't have Thanksgiving without it. It's more important to me than the turkey.
Right. So I bring you au gratins and you bring me nothing. Fine, next year,
Wow.
okay? You've told me about
Okay.
this cranberry. You rub it in my face 2 years in
Oh
a
my.
row, and next year, Rachel, if you're
Great.
listening, please save me a tiny little container of it.
Oh goodness. I feel like a jerk. Thanks.
Yeah, you should. Um, okay, well, today's topic is a really poignant one because we want to discuss ruining an investment and particularly how to ruin your website investment. And AI obviously is really reinvigorating websites for organizations because they're finding out how AI is basically using that information and it's kind of gotten new life again, which I think is a really positive thing. Like websites have sort of been on this set it and forget it mindset. Like you and I saw during COVID a big resurgence of people who had budget and they knew they would be okay. They just had to survive, a really long stretch of crap. But they did a bunch of projects that were kind of on the back burner. They needed a lot of time. And websites was one of those that got a healthy facelift. Then it's been 5 years now since COVID, which is crazy. And a
Wow.
couple of them are starting to show their age. In some organizations, it's, hundreds, maybe even not thousands of pages. So it's no small lift to do a website. And, the reason why we want to talk about this one is from an agency perspective and a company who's also redone their website. And I've got a ton of agency friends who are doing the same right now. There's a really fast way to ruin that investment. And Jay, maybe talk about a little bit of the life cycle of a website. Like, this is something I don't know that a lot of organizations really understand because they're not given, a lot of them inherit, I should say, like a website that could be like 10, 15 years old and they've made do with it. But
Right.
really, like, what should people expect? Because it is a huge investment. I would kind of want to understand that upfront.
Well, definitely this has changed. Again, I've been doing this now for, my gosh, 25 years and 15 years with this company. There's a lot of controversy around this from different aspects. So one, you touched on a little bit regarding the timing, is, how often should you be updating your website is an interesting topic alone. Again, there are people out there that say every 2 to 3 years. The challenge is, and you already kind of alluded to this as well, is it is a huge uplift. Even if your site's only, let's say, 50 or 100 pages, to do this right, it easily could take, 4 to 6 months. And it's a huge distraction. And so, my personal mindset, again, I just don't like being distracted. And so there is that leaning towards the if it ain't broke, why break it or try to fix it kind of thing. Um, and so I think, high level, I think every, probably 2 to 5 years is probably a good timing. Now, of course, there's always things you could do regarding band-aids and adjusting messaging. But, we have this conversation very often, and, we always lead with the why. And when clients, current or prospective, come to us and ask the question, hey, we're thinking about redoing our website, we always ask the question, why? And more often than not, and obviously we'll dive in this a little more detail, it's more of a personal gut feeling. Either to your point, like we had one client where, she was newer to the business, inherited a website. It wasn't a platform that she and or some of her team members were comfortable in editing. And she hated the website. It didn't have the colors she liked, all the things. And that was the main reason why she wanted to rebuild the whole entire thing. Now, this situation, that client was over 1,000-page website. So that was probably a good, 6 to 8 month project. And so I think for me, it's like, what else is on your plate? What kind of budgets do you have? Other priorities, all the other stuff. And then from there, it's like really having the conversation of, does the data and competitors and all the things justify you entering this process? Because even for us, this always takes so much longer to do than we all realize. And the amount of stress it causes, especially in the design and the content phase, we've had so many clients during the process are like, oh, I'm so excited when this is going to be done, but I never want to do this again. It's almost like remodeling your house.
It's exactly like remodeling a
It really
house.
is. Again, I think about that often. I actually use that analogy a lot where I don't want to upset or be a Debbie Downer kind of thing with clients when they're considering this, but I do like to make sure clients understand, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because some of those things, even if they don't take a lot of time, they could really cause and trigger a lot of pain. And that's never a fun process. So, does that address part of what you're asking? Obviously, I can keep going and talk about more other things, but was that high level what you wanted me to touch on?
It was, I
Okay.
think just understanding the shelf life of one. And then what would, if I'm playing devil's advocate here, which I love to do, I'm going to go, Jay, why even do it? Why should I even consider this? One, it's a huge investment in time and it's a huge investment in money. Why would I even do that?
Well, I love that. So again, so great question. I appreciate that one. I like where you're going with this, by the way. Um, I think for me, as you know, my brain always is wired to the revenue stuff. So I always lead with that. And so it's like, are you missing out on opportunities? Now, again, you touched on AI, but the world has changed so much and it's rapidly every year is changing. And I think, from my perspective, if a client is in a more competitive space and they have a bunch of competitors that are making their brand, their website, etc., very innovative, it's loading faster. It has better practices regarding SEO and being found with an AI. It's leveraging tech stack and technology that's going to be more relevant or embraced by audiences, things like, video and photography. Are you differentiated yourself enough, not just in the copy, but also in the look and feel and matches your brand? And so you start going through all of this stuff and you never want to be a situation where your competitors are flying by you and they're the ones that are getting all the leads from your prospective clients. And so I look at it from a missed opportunity perspective. Like I said, I'm like, if your website, let's say it would cost, I don't know, 30 to 50 grand or 50 grand more, or whatever it might be, to rebuild and help recoup or present yourself in the best way to gain those opportunities that would more than pay off within a couple of months, then for me, that is how I lean towards, okay, I think we're at the cusp here of we really need to consider doing this now or in the near future. But on the flip side, if the site is running well, it's on a pretty modern and not bloated template like in WordPress. It has all the right best practices regarding SEO and copy and engagement, and it loads fast. You're in a laggard more industry, and your competitors have websites that are has animated GIFs on it, and is 15 years old. It's like all that stuff. Then it's like, okay, maybe you don't have to do this today. Maybe now you can plan for either low season in your business or when you don't have a ton of priorities. Like the worst thing you could do is go into this process where you have annual planning and other things going on or big events going on and just going to be a huge headache because end of the day, I think to wrap up that question is no matter how much the agency takes on the responsibility of start to finish building the site, you as the client have to be involved at some level. At every stage of approving things at a minimum, looking at the design, the wireframes, the content plan, the photography, the navigation, like all the things. And if you aren't available to review stuff, one day slips because you're at an event or whatever, your whole project plan will shift. And if you're trying to back into, let's say, a huge event where you're launching some new market or you're going to some conference or you're speaking at an event or whatever it might be. And now all of a sudden there's extra pressure on speeding things up near the finish line. That's never fun. So it just always, again, it always takes longer than I think people realize, especially when clients can't, review and approve things quickly.
It is such a lift, but because there's so much that goes into it, one small change can completely affect the entire site, which we've seen before. And while we want to kind of talk about one big way we see the investment tank, there are a couple of other ways that we'll share too. So let's talk about that first big way in which you can just completely tank your website investment. And I've seen it, and actually, I will share a personal experience in this one because
Hmm.
as our sort of acting CMO, I've had to think differently. And one of the most challenging parts of my role, and I think for any CMO, they have this exact experience. I have to think like I'm operating this business from a marketing standpoint, but I also have to think about it from the other side of the table. Okay, so my personal experience with websites, we did our own, what was it, February this year. So like February for springtime, we redid our website, and it was incredibly challenging to think about it from both sides, from Sarah, the CMO, like you're the string can inside person, making sure that this is totally on brand. It's reflective of everything we're offering. It makes sense. But then I also have to think about it from someone who's going to be checking out this site.
Mm-hmm.
And a study recently shown that 100% of B2B prospects will at some point look at your website. Now, of course, this didn't specify whether it was in the biz dev process or what, but yes, that's a huge number. And I'll put the study in the show notes so I'm not making crap up. But that was really eye-opening. And so I'm in this webinar, and we were offered the opportunity to show your website to everyone on this webinar. And my big theme this year and next year is I'm going to be more courageous. So I thought, whatever, I'm just going to throw StringCan's URL up there and maybe he'll get to it. Well, he did. And so he's asking everyone, he's showing all these URLs as examples. And the question was, what do you do? Who do you do it for? And who are you? Super simple questions. 9 times out of 10, you couldn't answer at least one of those questions. And it was shocking to me how people were like volunteering their websites, and they were not rude about grilling people, but it was so clear how most of us in the room, like hundreds of people, could not answer those super simple questions. And it was really eye-opening to me how we view our sites from such a different lens than just someone else who's had no experience or no interaction with your brand. And it was kind of like you and I have talked about assumptions and A/B testing and how important that
Mm-hmm.
is because you don't know what you don't know. And so that was absolutely mind-boggling to me. And of course, ours had some recommendations and suggestions. I don't think any site is perfect for everybody out there, but that's also one of the detrimental pieces of trying to make a website perfect. Is there such a thing as good enough? I'm curious, Jay, is there such a thing as good enough?
Well, um, as long as the site is getting you the quality leads you want and is helping you exceed your goals, then yes, it's good enough. Again, like, we've had that chat with clients so many times where they're like, "Ooh, we want to go after a whole new market or new segment or whatever the situation might be," and then all of a sudden they immediately go into, "We got to redo the whole entire site." And I'm
Mm.
like, wait a second here. You just a year ago spent like $60,000 on rebuilding this site, and you even told us during the process you never want to do this again, and how fast you forget. And so I'm like, there are simpler ways to do it. And they're like, well, how? And I'm like, we could build a landing page. You could do an outbound strategy to drive people to a landing page and validate this hypothesis you have if this is gonna, this theory is gonna be effective or not. But before you go through the process of redoing everything, the look and feel, the copy, the call to actions, the resources, all those things, let's make sure that this is actually going to generate the ROI and goals you're looking for. So I guess for me, it's like, it's just like you could just keep going and going and going. And I just think at some point you have to be like, okay, this is good enough. And that's, again, that was hard for me, as you know. It's like old me, even like 5 years ago, I just needed to dot my I's and cross my T's over and over again. And it got to the point where I was just wasting energy and my hours and time could be better used somewhere else.
Well, it's one way to ruin your investment, right? Is it's never
Sure.
good enough.
Yes. I think your point there is taken, but it's just, end of the day, it's just like you gotta, weigh all the pros and cons. And again, you could just keep going down these rabbit holes, and I think it causes big issues. But that probably isn't, I think, the biggest way people ruin the investments. Not that I want to
No,
lead you
and you
here.
just you just alluded to it, which is the rabbit hole. And I think you can avoid the rabbit hole, which is um if you don't have your focus. And where people just totally mess up this investment is they lose focus on who the website is
Yep.
for. And that is what we really wanted to talk about today was the fastest way to just tank this investment is to forget that this website is not for you. You might have internal stakeholders, but think about, a house, this is where it's very different. Your house is for you, you're living in it, you've got to make sure it's perfect for you. And I think that maybe is where the mindset gets a little crossed over in a negative way, is people think I am so invested in this, it has to be about me, for me, and please me. Instead of the investment is not for you, you are doing this for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree. I mean, again, like I mentioned, earlier that I've been in this industry for, gosh, 25 years. Um, I probably every year, on average, have been involved in probably, I don't know, 5 to 15 website projects. So you do the math, and that's at a minimum. It's some years it was probably like, two a month. And I think to your point, this tanking your investment. I can't really think of an example where this didn't come up. The hundreds of sites that I've been involved in. And to your point, it's a really tough situation where, if you're a chief marketing officer, let's say for, I don't know, a $50 million, B2B firm, and you've been in that industry, let's say for 20 plus years, and you've also been involved, let's say in, 5 website projects, either for the current company you're working with and or past jobs you've had, you do obviously have a good sense of the industry, the needs of the audience. You've spoken with, current and prospective customers. So I don't want to discount that. But to your point, is where I struggle is the conversation of like when I hear I love or I prefer, then there's that delicate dance of us being like, well, is it I speaking on behalf of your customer, or I you? Like, again, like we had a chat with a client, gosh, this was probably 10 plus years ago. Her favorite color was orange. And again, she inherited the website, inherited the brand. She didn't love the brand guidelines that were in place, but they were the brands that the entire company was following. And so when she mentioned that she loved the color orange, luckily I already knew what the brand guidelines were from reviewing that prior to the meeting. And my first question was like, without being condescending, are you planning on adding orange into your brand standards? And she looked at me like I was like a goofball. And that was where without being rude, I'm like, well, right now you don't have anything related to an orange color in your brand. And it's not just a color, there is a personality and tone to it. And I want to have that strategic conversation around, are we going to be investing energy into incorporating that? Because you have some colors that are going to be completely contradicting or conflicting with that orange color. And so she's like, I just love it. I really want the site to have it on there. And it just didn't really gel with any data to prove that that would be the right thing to do. And so I feel like in that situation, I was really proud of us as a good partner. We thought about it from the strategic perspective. And to your point, Sarah, we focus heavily on what does your customer base need? What's going to make them feel more comfortable and trusting to want to say to you, hey, I'm interested in having a conversation from a business development perspective. At the end of the day, Miss Client, if we did the orange and actually reduced your current leads, which is the main goal of why you want to redo all this, would that be a negative? And if we go colors, maybe you personally don't like, but it does actually help you increase your quality goals and you're helping exceed your revenue goals, wouldn't that be a more of a positive story? And that's really where I think we try to focus on is like using data and goals to help justify these decisions. And not just about color, but it's everything. It's the layout, the tone of the copy, the call to actions, the downloadable resources, all those things. And if you focus on it from your personal point of view only, based upon you liking certain things, that's where I think, to your point, is going to completely ruin the investment. And I think going to distract the entire project. The next thing you know, what's going to happen is someone at the organization who maybe isn't involved, which has happened to us unfortunately too many times, 11th hour, they're like, wait a second here, why are we talking this way? Or why are we using this color? Or where did this photo strategy come from? And all of a sudden now, 11th hour, we're having to put, the brakes on things and having to now resell the whole entire thing to this person who wasn't involved. And that causes obviously even more stress when you're almost to the finish line.
Yeah, which the subsequent or tangential way to also tank the investment is by having too many stakeholders.
Hmm.
Because unless your stakeholders themselves and you're all aligned that you are having the mind of the customer coming first, then it's so hard to get so many opinions because websites are very personal. It is the front door of your brand for a lot of people. It's where people validate, it's where, a lot of information is housed. It's just a really nice, tidy little digital house. And when you get too many opinions that aren't focused on the major outcome of the site, it becomes a total mess. And it can create a lot of unnecessary tension between marketing teams as well if you're not super aligned. And I think there's also a little bit of a hierarchy in how agencies handle website changes, for example. I know we've talked about this just internally that there is so much that goes into it. That's why they're so expensive. And we kind of want to open the kimono a little bit and share some of that, even though someone out there is going TLDR on to the next. I don't want to hear the details. Just someone else may manage it for me. But there's also if you want ADA compliance to be really high, there's levels of that can make or break your design changes. Like you can have no opinion on it because only certain fonts and colors and backgrounds will pass ADA compliance at the strictest level. And so there's a little bit of a hierarchy that we have to maintain in order to keep that site flowing. And just even one change, which could be the way a hyperlink is handled, is is a massive change
Hmm.
because there are so many small things to consider. It's just a domino effect of consequences, good or bad, when you make any changes. And so I think we're trying to help educate people a little bit because this is a big lift, but it's also super important. And we've shared before, but it's been a little bit that AEO, so, artificial intelligence as a search, AEO, GEO. I think people are like trying to find a term that everyone can agree on. But either way, we'll just call it AI search, is mainly driven by your website. When it comes to your brand, they're looking at the structure of your site, which is why SEO will not die. It's still incredibly important. The whole foundation of the house still has to be strong. And where AI is different is that it sees behind the sheathing, it sees that foundation and it's spitting that back out. And so this investment is more important than ever to make sure that it's done right. And there are ways in which you can just totally destroy this investment and blow it up unnecessarily when you aren't considering from the client's perspective or your customer's perspective, and you're kind of letting maybe some stakeholders or other opinions trump that experience for the customer.
I mean, I
Is there
love that,
anything
Sarah.
else I've missed?
No, I think honestly, you're bringing up some really good points. As you were just talking, I was thinking about that. This is where I think, there's a huge value, obviously, of going, with a firm like us who has done so many of these processes around, building websites, small, medium, and massive ones as well. Again, putting empathy on the client side. You don't know what you don't know. I think your point, like the ADA part, like those are the little things that are big things. And I think, again, like depending upon the company's culture, what the level of trust is, who needs to be involved, how large the company is from a compliance or legal perspective, all those things. I think again for us, we take the time to understand, all the things that need to be done to make this go as smooth as possible. I think for us, we always want to say to our clients, like that foundational process and step in the beginning is going to like literally make or break the success of that. And I think for us, we go through the process of who in your company may or may not have a voice. They might look at this, and be like, I don't like it or I do like it. And then are there things that you're considering possibly leveraging this website that's going to be a difference, a detour from your current brand strategy? I think again there. And so if there's all these things of like, we're thinking this, we're thinking that, that's where I think there's opportunity here of, unless there's a hard and fast date, and there typically never is, there's this assumption there is sometimes, but you can use the process in the beginning to do the proper auditing. So for example, if you're thinking about a new market segment or a new messaging strategy or a new color or whatever it might be, like I've already been talking about in the last 15 minutes or so, you could use your current site and do some testing with landing pages and then get data. Because again, if your organization likely will have situations come up where a stakeholder will come out of left field and they're going to, bring up their own personal thoughts. If you lead with data and not with emotion, we've been blown away by how well that works to sell to someone, hey, you got to trust me. I thought about that concern too. I worked with StringCan or whoever their agency is, and we actually did a 45-day test, either using Google Ads or LinkedIn ads or landing pages, or whatever it might be. And we actually found that people really embraced this new thing that we were thinking of doing. And that gave us the confidence that this actually could work out really well if we made a full-blown, brand around it. And I got buy-off from X, Y, and Z. And so I think there is unfortunately some politics that go into play here, because again, that besides the making all your decisions from a personal point of view and not from your client's point of view, like that is the single-handedly thing that constantly ruins the investment, the process, the whole experience. But besides that, all the other things that we think about regarding, before, during, and after, that's where I think also needs to be addressed as well. And the ADA example you brought up, Sarah, was a really good one because, my goodness, we've run into that situation where one of our clients, went with a different firm before hiring us. They spent like well over six figures and like 10 months to rebuild their site. The new site had like a 40% decrease in all the KPIs, less leads, it ran slower, all the bad things. They were losing organic rankings. They then just fired that agency and they came to us and like, you guys fix it. And unfortunately, it would cost more money to fix it than rebuilding the whole entire thing from scratch. And obviously, that was a very tough conversation having with the company who just went through complete hell and lost the entire investment. But what's interesting with that situation is about 30 to 40% of the problems, the more we dug into it, were that client's fault. That agency they hired were order takers and they said, okay, we'll do whatever you want. And they basically bloated the entire site where they had people randomly like, oh, my department is the most important department for this business, so I have to be on the home page. And they built this massive section on the homepage that bloated the entire homepage to incorporate this department into it. And when we dove into it, that department generated like 0.5% revenue of the company. It's like, why would you take up such huge real estate on the homepage for an area that's not really a huge priority for your business? You allowed a very confident, strong, bold leader who oversaw that department, and his whole personal perspective was, if you don't have it on the homepage, you're basically saying that my department isn't important. And it was really interesting conversation. So the client then realized that they were also part of the problem. That agency they selected, unfortunately, just said yes to everything, and that's why the site became a mess. Now, definitely that agency did a lot of things wrong, But that was a really unfortunate situation. And so I think if you're considering building a website, you need to take a step back and hopefully hear some of the things we're talking about here, where you really got to get your ducks in a row. You got to have the data to justify should you be doing this or not. If you're going to do it, what are the success metrics you're going to be aiming for? And then basically, end of the day, do you really understand your audience? And you got to make the entire website project around their needs, not yours. And that's where I think you're going to have a home run.
Yeah, and while you're doing that process, we've run into this, which one of the other hardest parts is how you communicate what's on your site. It can get bloated in so many other ways because you're so not confident that your message is clear. And the easiest way to do that is as my grandmother called it, the KISS method, the keep it super simple method. Just, if you want to call it dumbing it down, whatever, but you are always too close to what it is you're trying to convey that you will inevitably overcomplicate it. And it's just part of humans, we just have too much information for our own good sometimes, especially when you're running your own brand. And simplifying it in that example I shared earlier with the webinar, if you can give someone 10 seconds and all they're looking at is your hero section and they can say who you are, what you do, and who it's for, nailed it. Done.
Love it.
Which doesn't help us sell more websites at all, but that's not the point. It's to help you enjoy the investment of your site because it is a lot. It can be such a beautiful moment when it launches, and there's inevitably hiccups. Be patient with those, but it's just such a relief when you have something that was such a lift. It's so beautiful and you're happy with it because your customers are going to be happy with it. Remember the outcome.
Love
So,
that.
anything else you want to add, Jay?
No, I think I love the kiss part, that was genius. And I think again to wrap this up, like, from a solution perspective, as we often do with these various different podcast shows that we do, is clearly we're passionate about this topic. And if you are in the phase of even considering a overhaul of your website or rebuild, whatever it might be, we'd love to have a conversation with you. And again, we are really, really good partners from the mindset of we'll talk you through the process, and you will come out of that knowing if you really should do this now, or maybe hold off for a period of time. I think there is a lot of benefit to having an outside source coming in and giving you some guidance around this. It would be similar to, again, if you're going to build a home, unless you're in the construction business, I would hope that you would rely on an expert because it's not just the permitting process. It's like you don't want to have your family in a home and the roof caving in. So I think again here it's like, not that we want to be, Debbie Downers, whatever, and be super negative here, but I think the expertise and experience that we have over the many years is we've seen it all. And we can walk you through the things that are going to be the gotchas, like the AD example that Sarah gave. So again, if you are considering this, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Definitely please reach out to us. And let's wrap this one up.
Yeah, and take that little trick and tip. Oh my goodness. Take that with you, go back to your team and show the hero section for 10 seconds and see if you can answer those 3 questions. And then you know exactly where you need to start. So,
Love
all
it.
right.
Thanks,
Well,
Sarah.
we hope, yeah. Hey, thank you, Jay. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.